right, good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Castillo, and I am the coordinator for Team DSAS. I am joined by my colleague Miriam Cabrera, who is an applicant liaison with Team DSAS, and we are here for our Reapplicant workshop, and we're excited.
Yeah.
So, the purpose of this workshop is to give some tips and tricks for strengthening your application if you are thinking about reapplying. But before we jump in, I just want to get a quick sense of where you all are joining us from. So we've got a quick poll, and you can either text your response to us, or you can go to pollev.com/teamdsas775 to send in your answer. And if you are maybe watching on your phone, you're not able to text us, you can also just put in your response into the chat. But really, we just want to know where you're joining us from. So take a moment to let us know. All right, so we've got Houston, Austin, Dallas, San Antonio. Nice. Nice, love it. We're getting some great representation across the state here. Perfect. A lot of folks from Austin, that's where we are too. College Station, Stephenville, Victoria. Anybody from out of state? Let's see. Tyler.
Switzerland. Oh, Victoria.
Oh, wow. Switzerland, huh? Well, howdy. Welcome, right? Well, right, let's see if we've got more coming in. Amazing. Boston, Detroit. Wow. We've got some folks in the chat too, letting us know where they're from. Thank you all. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. That's really exciting to see where our applicants are coming from. Thank you all for being here. We're going to get back to our presentation. So thank you so much for that. Let's see. So what is the mission of Team DSAS? So Team DSAS is part of the Texas Health Education Service. Our mission is to support applicants and the pre-health community in reaching and empowering aspiring dentists, physicians, podiatrists, and veterinarians with educational resources to enhance their preparation for a career in the health professions. And that's a lot to say that we are here not only to facilitate the application process, which you're already familiar with as a reapplicant, but also to support, to guide, and to educate along the way. So here, if you weren't already familiar, these are our member institutions. So currently we serve 14 medical, 4 dental, 2 veterinary, and 1 podiatry school. Now, that actually includes some new schools. So you'll notice that new for entry year 2023, we have a UT Tyler School of Medicine. And then for this current cycle for EY 2022, we've got the UT Rio Grande Valley School of Podiatry joining us. So if you submitted an application for this current cycle that we are actively wrapping up for EY 2022, just be on the lookout for a notification from us when the podiatry school is ready to start accepting applications. And I'm going to pause for the cause. I'm so sorry I didn't let you know ahead of time kind of how this whole workshop would function. So my apologies there. I was just too eager to get started. But we have time set aside at the end for Q&A. So once we get to that point, please submit your questions And you can submit them at any time. We just won't be able to answer them live during the presentation, but we'll come back and try to hit up as many of those questions as we can before we end for the evening. So thank you for that, and my apologies. So before we move on, we want to take a little quiz to see if we all are on the same page about what defines a reapplicant. So let's pull that up there. In the same way, you can text it, you can go to your computer browser. A reapplicant is anyone who submitted a TMDSAS application, true or false. And then again, if you can't go to poll everywhere, you can also submit it in the chat. And we'll take a moment. Let's give it a few more seconds. Okay. Got some brave souls saying false. All right, so truth is that was kind of a trick question because yes, a reapplicant is someone who has previously submitted a TMDSAS application, but that only means if your application was transmitted to the schools. So if you submitted an application but then withdrew it before it was transmitted, then you would not be considered a reapplicant for that cycle. So yes, kind of a trick question. Everybody's right, but that's just an important distinction and to make when thinking about what really a reapplicant means. So again, if your application was never sent off to the schools, then you would not be considered a reapplicant. All right, so before we keep going, we have one more question. Thank you for humoring us here with all of our questions, but we want to know kind of where our audience is in terms of their journey. So we have another question for you. No wrong answer here, but which of the following best describes you? All right. Okay, so it's really exciting to see how all of these change and they're still going. Great. So thank you so much for sharing your responses. It's so helpful to see kind of where our applicants are in their journey. And as you can see, you all are representing a diverse group. So thank you so much for that feedback. So we're going to keep going here. And let's talk about our objectives. So our objectives in this workshop are to, first and foremost, promote reapplicant success. And so we're going to do that through the lens of, I saw that there were very few people who said that they had never submitted an application. So the vast majority here are truly reapplicants. And so you do have a very unique perspective as a reapplicant. You are experienced already. So we want to go through just some things to keep in mind through that reapplicant lens and how we can strengthen your application. So we're going to also review some facets of the application itself. We're going to talk about coursework, things that make TMDSAS unique, and then we're going to talk about some helpful resources. All right, so kind of want to start off here with this quote from Margaret Thatcher that says, "You might have to fight a battle more than once to win it." So we know that this is a tough process, right? And we really applaud you for your perseverance, for sticking with it, for your determination. Recognize that comes through also to the schools. The schools take note of the fact that, you are sticking with something because truly this is your passion, this is your goal in life, and you're not giving up on this fight. And that is something to feel very, very proud of. Also recognize that, being a reapplicant puts you in a unique position. So think about how you can leverage that experience to help strengthen your application. And let's dig into a little bit more of that. So promoting reapplicant success. So the first thing we want to talk about here is holistic review. So you're probably already familiar with the fact that the schools use holistic review when they are evaluating their applicants. Why is this important? Well, this gives the school an opportunity to understand what makes you, you, not just the skills that you possess, which can more easily come across on paper, right? So let's talk about what that means. So we have this experiences, attributes, and metrics model, which starts out with this outer layer of experiences that may or may not have been things that are in your control. For example, experiences could be things as large scale as world or cultural events, or they could be things that you have chosen to participate in, for example, leadership experiences. So these are things that provide context, right? They show what your path looks like. The second layer there, these are your attributes. So these are the things that are unique to you. Now they could be, for example, your geography, right? Where you're from. They could be your values. They could be your sexual orientation, your race, the languages that you speak. Okay, things that are unique to you and show who you are. And then at the middle, we've got the metrics. So these are those skills that you possess, and they convey to the schools whether or not you're able to handle the academic rigors of professional school. So all of these things come together to show who you are as an applicant. Now, this is important for schools for many reasons. One is that this helps with mission fit, right? So, and a school can see, the values that you have put forth in your application, and they can say, oh, this is somebody who really understands our mission, and we believe that they are going to help promote that. So one thing to think about in terms of your application, areas that you can highlight your experiences, your attributes, and your metrics are, for example, in your essays, in your activities, and then, of course, in your interviews. All right, so another important area of the application are the GPA calculations. And you all already kind of know the deal here. TMDSAS calculates so many different GPAs. So we go all the way from your general overall GPA to your very specific biology GPA of the fall semester of your freshman year. Okay, so we're talking big and small scale here. What really is important to take away here, when you want to be just prepared for all of those different GPAs, because as you know, when you review your application, you see all these different ones are calculated, and you want to know what actually goes into each one of those GPAs. But what's also important to keep in mind is that the schools look at overall trends. So we've got an illustration here that shows somebody who, kind of struggled at the very beginning of their college career, but then they really turned things around, and we see the difference overall in their GPA at the end of their senior year, and they're graduating with a great GPA. Now, in your individual case, right, you might not notice such a dramatic change in your overall GPA. However, if you are showing progress in term after term, if you're on that upward trend, That's really what matters. And the schools definitely take note of that. So this might be one of the variables that you have had on your mind as you are preparing to reapply. Just keep that in mind, right? And think about it in that way to help you kind of have perspective of this, right? So GPA is just one part of your application. And like I mentioned, if you're showing progress, that's what counts. That's what the schools are looking to see. All right, so we want to show you kind of a new way that we are communicating our statistics. So we've got these statistics dashboards available, and I'm going to just show you what this is. And this is an interactive way to just learn important stats. These go back 10 years. And we're going to put a link in the chat here for how you can access these on your own so you can play around with this information. But what we're looking at here, right, these are for dental applicants, and you can just set whatever parameters you want. Let's say we want to look at the folks that matriculated in 2021 and who happen to be reapplicants and see how many of those folks got in, okay? We can play around with other things too, like how many people interviewed as opposed to matriculated, get a sense of that. We can take a look, and here we're looking at, total number, we're looking at GPA. We can do the same for test scores, but really here we want you to take your time, play around with this, use this as a learning tool. So that information is available for you. Please go and take a look at it. And before we move on, we're going to do another poll. I wish I could say it was our last, but it's definitely not. But I want to hear from you. What is one thing you wish you had done differently the last time you applied? So can't wait to hear what you all are going to say. All right, applied earlier. Operational statement. Seeing some trends. Great. Wow, and I'm seeing some come in the chat too. That's great. Okay, so I've seen that come up quite frequently. Applying earlier, submitting earlier, starting sooner. Great. That's a real common one. I see that. Studying, yeah, that's important. Retaking the MCAT. Okay, wow, yeah. VCPM GPA. Okay, thank you so much. I think that's a perfect segue into our next topic, which is why it's important to apply early. I think you all read my mind. So if you are thinking of reapplying, then you're probably wondering, should I submit my application at a different time, i.e. earlier, right? So let's look here at kind of what happens to an application depending on when you submit. So kind of the constant here, right, that gold bar, if you will, is TMDSAS processing. So for us on our end, it takes about 4 weeks to process your application. So as we progress through the cycle, what you're seeing is that red, which is working on the application, right? You're seeing that number grow or that image grow, and then the green, which is the schools being able to review your application and extend interview invitations, that kind of shrinks, right? So we don't say that to be scary, but essentially the longer you take to submit your application, then yeah, that leaves the schools with less time to review it and to maybe extend an invitation to interview. So the most important thing here to keep in mind is that you do kind of have to balance these things out, right? First and foremost, you should apply when you are ready to apply and you feel like this application is the best representation of you. That's when you should apply. But you should also keep in mind that if you wait to submit your application until the end of the cycle, then you're really not leaving a whole lot of time for the schools to review your application. So that's an important one. I really appreciate all the feedback from you all. All right, let's see. So let's move on to another important facet of this whole process, which is categorizing your personal biography. So your personal biography is made up of all of your activities, and your activities can be further broken down into things that are considered, achievements, things that are experiences, your planned activities, and then we have meaningful activities. So what you want to think about here is, what do you want the schools to know about you? So again, think back to that experiences, attributes, and metrics model. So the metrics, they already speak for themselves, right? They're going to see that in your test scores and your GPA. But when it comes to your activities, that's totally different. And you want to keep in mind some questions as you are articulating your responses to these activities, right? So you want to think about how these activities have influenced you. Specifically, how have they prepared you? What did you learn about yourself in the process? What did you learn about health professions in the process? Okay. You might be wondering, should I include this activity? Should I not include this activity? If it's important to you, then it's important to the schools. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, you, as a reapplicant, this information will roll over to your new application. However, I certainly would encourage you to take the time to go back and revisit your responses and make sure that you are conveying what you really want to and thinking about it from that lens, right? Like, what do the schools want to know about me? Okay, so keep that in mind. Go back, take a look at your activities and see if you can make any edits to improve this part of your application. One thing that does tend to happen, hopefully it did not happen to you, but it does happen, is people either skip the meaningful experiences or they might not quite understand what the meaningful experiences refer to. So in that section of the application, you're going to pick your top 3 activities. Now, these are the top 3 that you've already talked about in the application. So you're going to just give further explanation as to why these were the most meaningful for you. All right, so let's look at another way to showcase yourself. And this was also brought up in the poll responses, and we're talking about the essays here. So this is another opportunity to use your experiences and your attributes. In your personal statement, you're talking about your motivation and how your experiences have prepared you for this. We highly recommend that you use the STAR strategy. So you think about situation, task, action, result. If you're not familiar, just Google it. There's tons of resources about how to use this framework. You also have your personal characteristics. That very, very directly ties into your attributes and your experiences again, and how you can use those to enrich the experiences of others. So think about what experiences, attributes, and competencies you want to highlight. And then, of course, you also have the optional essay, which, let's be real, like, we shouldn't consider that optional, right? So if you have this opportunity, take advantage of it. And this is a chance to talk about anything relevant that you did not already mention somewhere else in your application. It's a time to speak directly to the admissions committees. And, one piece of advice we give here is to make sure you get feedback. So go to the Writing Center on campus, reach out to your pre-health advisor, talk to a friend. It always helps to get another set of eyes on your essays and just get some real feedback. And, it's not a one and done thing, right? And what I mean by that is be willing to put in the time to write, multiple drafts, to edit it, and to make sure that what you're putting in there, again, is exactly what you want to, that it speaks to who you are, is the best representation of you. All right. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about letters of evaluation. So it is important that you pick evaluators who know your story and can speak to your attributes. And why is this important? So let's just think about what the letters actually tell the schools. So first of all, they assess your suitability for the rigors of professional school. They provide perspective to corroborate the strengths, the competencies, and the activities in your application. And they give a description of the unique contributions that you can bring to the health professions. So what might that look like, right? So let's say that you have a volunteer coordinator write a letter for you. They can speak to your ethical responsibility and accountability. A supervisor can speak to your leadership and teamwork. An advisor can talk about your resilience and adaptability. A physician can talk about your critical thinking and your aptitude when it comes to living systems. These are all important. So one thing to keep in mind here is that it's important to start these relationships early and to maintain them. One thing you can do to help that, to promote these relationships, is to have good communication. So that not only helps your evaluator learn who you are, right? The more they speak to you, the more they see you, but also this is just a way to strategically make sure that your evaluators are aware of your personal timeline with your application and that they're able to get your letters in on time, because maybe that was something that you experienced in a past cycle where your letters kind of came in later, and then the schools maybe weren't really able to get a full picture of you because those letters weren't in. So as you're familiar, Team DSAS will not delay the processing of your application until your letters are in. We will process and transmit without letters. But as you well know, it's likely that the schools might not consider you until those letters do come in and can speak to, who you are as an applicant. So keep those in mind. One frequently asked question that we get for reapplicants is, I'm a reapplicant. Can I reuse the letters that I submitted last cycle? So the short answer is yes. There are a couple of caveats here. The letter must not be older than 1 year. So let's say specifically for somebody who applied in entry year 2022, their letter must be written after May 1st, 2021 in order for it to be eligible to be used for entry year 2023. That's probably a confusing way to say all that, but in a nutshell, the letters cannot be older than 1 year. What's also important to know is that they still need to be resubmitted. They won't automatically be rolled over, nor will your evaluator information be automatically rolled over either. So you still have to complete those parts of the application. But an important question to ask yourself if you do decide to reuse letters is, is this still the best representation of you? So is your evaluator speaking to your strengths? Are they providing that big picture that is going to be useful to the admissions committees? If the answer is no, then you may want to seek out, a different evaluator, somebody who maybe knows you better, or somebody who, maybe the other person might have submitted your letters late. So is that going to be an issue? Just some things to think about, right? But the short answer is yes, you can reuse letters for up to one cycle, but keep these things in mind. And so we've got Just another poll for you, of course. So the question here is, which area have you focused on the most in order to strengthen your application? Awesome. And then we've got folks adding into the chat. Professionalism, yeah. I like that. Got a combination here, GPA and test scores. Nice. Okay, great. So it looks like right now, activities are in the lead, followed closely by GPA. Awesome. Thank you all so much for responding to that. It's always just good to hear again what you all have been working on and seeing kind of what your focus has been. Let's see. So we're going to move on a little bit and talk about the Team DSAS application. Now, you all know the application, but we would just want to talk about some things to keep in mind as a reapplicant. All right, so right here, we've got all of the sections of the application. This is no surprise, you're familiar, but you do see the areas that are highlighted or that are in bold. Now, these are all of the areas that do not roll over. So a good chunk of your application will roll over, and thankfully that includes the coursework, right? Because that was really hefty to get through. So thankfully that rolls over. But you see there's a lot that does not roll over. And so you'll need to go back, complete these sections, and make sure you save them. Now, I have highlighted application history because that is critical, and we're going to talk about why. So your application history includes all of the Team DSAS and non-Team DSAS schools that you have applied to. And this also provides two unique opportunities. One, you can share with the schools what it is that you have been up to in this past year or in the time between applications. So whether you've been working, whether you've been in school, doing research, etc. It's also an opportunity to explain how you have strengthened your application. And so consider this, like a mini essay opportunity. You don't want to skip this. Because not only will skipping it cause processing delays, that means you'll get a message from us saying, hey, we need some information from you in order to keep going. But it will also mean that you haven't taken the opportunity to update the schools on what it is you've been doing and to really explain to them the steps that you've taken to strengthen your application. So if nothing else, I want you to remember to complete the application history portion of your application and to really think about it as an opportunity to provide further context, further explanation for you as a reapplicant. All right, the next thing I want to highlight here is the PCR. And the PCR is the prescribed coursework report. Again, I think you all are familiar with this and kind of how it functions. But basically, this is a record of all of your prerequisite coursework. Now, why it is critical is because this is an opportunity to review the status of your coursework, to catch any deficiencies early on so that you can resolve them. And the way we use this, with Team DSAS, once your application has been transmitted, you get that message from us, and we encourage you to immediately go and check your PCR. Remember, part of the processing of applications is to go through your coursework, and we might have made course coding adjustments. And so if you see that you are deficient in an area that you did not anticipate, this is an opportunity to go and to resolve that, to come up with a plan to meet those deficiencies before matriculation. So that's another important thing to keep in mind, is to review that PCR as soon as you get that notification from us. So speaking of coursework, let's just go over a few reminders and some updates. So firstly, remember that coursework must be entered exactly as it appears on your official transcript. Now, thankfully, as we mentioned, your coursework will roll over, but let's say you've taken, I saw that a few folks have said that they've worked on their GPA, which means that they've probably taken some courses in the meantime. So as you entered that new coursework, remember you're putting it in exactly as it appears on your official transcript. Use the course listings to help you identify the correct course area for each course. And then what you see here on the right, these are all of the prescribed course areas. You'll also notice that there are categories that are new. This is, you'll see an engineering and then a natural and physical sciences area. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So when entering your coursework, just some things to keep in mind. Remember we talked about, your GPAs and kind of how things get classified. So we're now going to have a new engineering GPA that is going to be separate. It's going to be its own thing. So there will be a category for engineering courses, and that will result in its own GPA. We'll also have a natural and physical sciences GPA, and with those courses, they will be included for the BCPM GPA only for our veterinary applicants. So it's important going in that you know what to expect. Also, we've got this table here that just shows some other types of courses and how they might appear in the GPA or on your PCR. So courses that are for non-science majors, let's say it's a biology course for non-science majors, it will appear in your BCPM GPA, will not be included on the PCR. Graduate courses also can be included in the BCPM GPA, but will not be included on the PCR. And then foreign courses, developmental courses, and audited courses will not appear in either of those areas. Let's see. And then specifically for engineering courses, so these are going to be separate from any prerequisites. They will form their own GPA. But I want to mention something specifically about engineering courses, specific to reapplicants. What we're saying here is that engineering courses will not be reviewed for inclusion as a prerequisite, and that is true. However, as a reapplicant, if you previously had engineering courses that were approved by TMDSAS to meet prerequisites, then we will honor those. But this is our new policy going forward. And for natural and physical sciences, we will have that category. They will only be, again, they'll only be included for veterinary applicants in the BCPM GPA. Okay, and I saw a quick question here from Katie, just to respond to that real quick, that does include animal science as part of natural and physical sciences. All right, so a couple of things that are unique to TMDSAS. So first of all, you know that we have a residency determination process. I'm certain that most of you are already familiar with this. I'm bringing this up just in case in the time that has passed, if your residency has changed, maybe you did not qualify as a Texas resident previously, but now you believe you have established a domicile in the state, then we are happy to work with you through that process. Just be advised that you are likely to need to provide documentation to verify your residency. If you have any questions in the meantime, before we get into the next cycle, you can always send us an email to info@teamdsas.com. Since you already have an account, you can send us an internal message if you just have questions about your situation, and we are happy to take a look and talk through that process with you. So another unique element to TMDSAS is that we send out an annual applicant survey. And this is a shameless plug for this survey. But this is essential to get feedback from our applicants. And so if you submitted an EY 2022 application, then you have received an email from us asking you to complete the survey. It is available until March 31st. And we've been sending this out for a number of years now. And just to let you know, your feedback has helped us in so many ways. For example, it has helped us to expand our resources. That has led to, for example, creation of new course listings. We are on track to develop a new application interface for EY 2024. And, we have these application workshops, right, for targeted specific populations. And this has come out of feedback from you all. So it takes just a few minutes and it'll help us out in a really big way. So please, if you got that email from us, go ahead and complete that survey as soon as you can. And we thank you so much for that. All right, so let's talk about a couple of references here. So I want to encourage you to take a picture or a screenshot of this. This is our application timeline for EY 2023. So note that the application opens May 2nd. You can submit starting May 16th. We really recommend that you take those 2 full weeks to work on your application, even though, like we said, a lot of your information is going to roll over. Some really key areas will not, and it's important that you give yourself the time to work through them. Also important to keep in mind the application deadline. So take a picture of that and save it. Also, this information is on our website, but just to reinforce those dates. We also have our application guide. So the application guide, formerly known as the application handbook, is undergoing a complete makeover. Now, this is going to become fully embedded onto our website, and it's currently being migrated right now. As you're familiar, the handbook, which now the guide, is your one-stop shop for application instructions, policies, and support resources. So you can definitely take a look at that handbook. That's still relevant information. Just know going into the new cycle that is going to appear differently on our website and will hopefully be much more user-friendly and just be a seamless process as you work through the application. So that's just a heads up on that change there. All right, and we have some additional support resources that you might not be familiar with. So the Inside Health Education newsroom is the home for existing resources like the Courage sessions, the Inside Health Education podcast, and articles from TMDSAS and JAMP, and support resources from health professions and our member institutions. And so these articles really run the full gamut. We've got some big picture ideas that really help to develop your mindset, like how important it is to build a support system. And they go all the way down to the minutia of how to enter AP courses. So, there's a full spectrum here, lots of different things. We come out with new content all the time. So you're going to have an opportunity to subscribe to that in just a moment. Here's another resource I'd like to highlight, and that is the TMDSAS office hours. So these are weekly live Q&A sessions that are hosted by a TMDSAS support. They address FAQs that come up throughout the cycle. So they're very topical, and they are curated based on questions that are trending at the moment. So just think about, if it's a question that you have, somebody else probably has that same question. So it's important to take advantage of this resource and to tune in to get the answers to your questions real time. All right, let's see. In addition to that, we have some more upcoming workshops. So these are all, audience specific. If you fall into one of these categories and you'd like to attend another workshop, save these dates. So these are for workshops. And then on the next slide, we have some panels with the schools. So these are super special. This is an opportunity to hear directly from the schools, and multiple schools will be represented at each of these panels. So again, it never hurts to get more information, to get more perspective. So we highly encourage you to take a moment and to check those out. And as with this, if you aren't able to catch it live or you can't stay for the whole thing, you'll always be able to watch it later on our channel. All right, so I want to encourage you to take out your phone, scan this QR code here. That will take you to all of the resources that we've mentioned and much, much more. Also give you an opportunity to subscribe to Inside Health Education. And we have pretty much reached the end here. I want to thank you. But before we go, I have one last question for you. So the question is, who or what motivates you to keep fighting this battle, to keep working towards achieving your dream of a career in the health profession? So let us know. Okay, we got family. Medicine is just too cool. Love that. Daughter. Nice. Wonderful. Family, that's a common one. I'm seeing that. Myself, love that. Family. Family, yeah. Your wife, your loved ones. And I think that's something that we can all really relate to, right? We all have loved ones that inspire us, motivate us, desire to help animals, help others. That's amazing. I love that. Will you all, please keep sending them in. You have shared some beautiful responses. We want to just encourage you to keep that motivation at the forefront. Keep that in mind as you keep going, as you keep working, and just remember that we are here to help. So we love nothing more than to facilitate this process and see our applicants become successful. And we thank you so much for joining us for this workshop. We want to take some time now to address some of your questions. And so I'm going to invite Miriam back, and we're going to address some of the questions that came through. Let's see, Miriam, did you notice? Okay, got a good question here. Will UT Tyler be an active school on the Team DSAS in May? So it should be. I don't have that that date finalized, but you will be notified if it's not. So if you go in, and obviously if you don't see it as a school option at the time you choose to apply, once it does become available, you will be notified. Okay, so this is a great question. Courses that are generally BCPM but listed under a veterinary title, i.e. veterinary biology, still qualify for BCPM for MD applicants. So yes, if it is taught in the biology department, then it will still qualify for BCPM, even if the title says, veterinary biology, for example. Great question. For EY 2022 applicants, defined to reapply in the next cycle, EY 2023, or is it generally recommended to wait until EY 2024? Great question, Parker. And really the answer here is when it's best for you. So if you want to take, an additional year to work on strengthening your application in any way, then, take that time. This is a marathon, right? So there's no rush, but you want to choose a time that's best for you. What resources for non-traditional students are there for personal statement review? Great question. So if you are not currently working with an advisor, maybe you're not enrolled and you don't have access to an advisor, we want to encourage you to reach out to NAP. So NAP is a National Association of Advisors for the pre-health community. And we're going to put just a link here. Give me 1 second to put that link in the chat. This is a resource for you as a non-traditional applicant to get some extra support. So go ahead and connect with an advisor, and that is, one person, who can help you take a look at that personal statement to strengthen that up. Can you share some tips about applying as a non-resident? Is it worth it to apply? If so, perhaps some tips. Okay, yeah. So, definitely there are, you're familiar with the 90-10 rule. 90% of the seats are dedicated to Texas residents. But that means that's a significant number that are also available to non-residents. So, you want to think about, if you're reapplying, what are some of the things that you can do to strengthen your application, like the ones we talked about, your GPA, your essays, your metrics, if it's, if maybe you're considering retaking any of the tests. Also, do your research with the schools, with their values, with their mission statements, and make sure that you are addressing that in your application, because you really need to show the schools that you are a good fit mission-wise for them, and that's going to help you stand out. Let's see. Okay, so for applicants that have a low undergraduate BCPM but a high post-bac or master's BCPM, will those GPAs be considered, and can an applicant still get an interview? So absolutely, those GPAs are going to be considered. As I mentioned, we calculate tons of different GPAs, some very specific ones. And so the school is going to have access to all of these different GPAs. So I highly encourage you, especially that question, to join us for one of our panels with the schools, because this is an opportunity to ask them directly. Now, I can say, from our end, what the application will look like, right? So yeah, you're going to see all these different GPAs, but you want to hear from the schools what it is that they consider, and I'm going to encourage you to join us for one of those panels. But the short answer to your question is yes, all of those GPAs will be considered. Do we need a completely new personal statement, or can we primarily reuse our previous essay? Great question, Cassidy. And the answer is yes, you can reuse them. But with anything, I would encourage you just to take a closer look at it and to make sure that, it is hitting all of those notes, right? So you're talking about your experiences and attributes. You're talking about how you are a good fit mission-wise. You're talking about what your motivation is, how you're prepared, how your experiences have led you to this point. So keep that in mind, and you make the decision as you're editing or as you're rewriting your essay, if you choose to do so. How important is research experience to the application? I had no research hours in my application this round and fear that may have hurt me. So that's a great question. And I think one way to look at this is it depends on the institution that you apply to. So if you go, and again, this is part of, doing your homework, if you are applying to a school that's very research heavy, then maybe you might, that might be perceived as a deficit. There's not, one answer to this question. I think it is a little bit more nuanced. I think it involves taking a look at the schools that you apply to and how they view that research. Okay, if I have lived in Texas for my 4 years of undergrad, lived in Texas during my gap year, and get a full-time job in Texas in June, can I establish domicile for EY 2023? And the answer to your question is maybe. So it really depends. Residency has to be assessed on a case-by-case basis. We need to see that you have established domicile. So I'm going to recommend that you reach out to us directly so that we can get a little bit more context with your situation, and we can prepare you for what kind of documents you might need to submit in order to verify your residency. But great question. Let's see, is the optional personal statement the best place to explain GPA, or is there a recommended section in the application? I think that's a great question. I think that would be a great place to address it. So this is, your opportunity to provide context for anything else that you haven't really been able to address directly. And there's not a specific section of the application that talks, that asks you to explain your GPA. So I would 100% recommend using that opportunity to go further into that. Okay, let's see. Recommendations for schools that require an evaluation letter from someone in academia. I've been taking online classes for 2 years and don't really have close relationships with professors. Yeah, so Fernando, that's definitely can be, a hindrance. But this is where it would be, in your best interest to reach out and to try to make those connections. Again, if you are needing some guidance with that, I recommend you speak to your pre-health advisor. If that's not somebody that you speak to regularly, it's a good practice to get into to talk to them. Do courses coded as other science still count towards BCPM? So great question. So this is where we're phasing out that other science BCPM. We wanted to be very, very clear that the courses that are in BCPM are the courses that are meeting those prerequisites. There will be very few exceptions for courses that do not meet prereqs, but are also included in the BCPM GPA. So that, now again, like I said, we will honor previously coded courses for our reapplicants, but moving forward, we are phasing out the other science, and that's why we have our engineering and our natural and physical sciences. So I have to include my ESL courses as well. Those courses were taken towards my bachelor's degree. Yes, ESL, English as a second language. Thank you, great question. Yes, the answer to that is you do need to include those. You need to include every college course that you took that was for credit, even if it was, like ESL or a type of developmental course. You must include those in the application. If they appear on your transcript, they need to be included in the application.
Okay, 1 minute left.
All right, perfect question. Will the recording of today's presentation be made available? Absolutely. I'm sorry that you were not able to join us for the whole thing, but yes, you can definitely catch the recording of that here on our channel. Okay, and let's see, do we have time for one more question? How should I get feedback from schools I applied to? Several have refused to provide any and pointing me to a generic reapplication workshop. Okay, great question. So yeah, I think it would be great and first of all, it'd be great to, again, join us for one of our panels where the schools will be present so you can get just their perspective generally. But I would, encourage you to take the feedback that you can get. If you aren't able to get feedback directly from the schools, again, I'm going to keep preaching about your pre-health advisor and encourage you to work with them to look at maybe some weak spots in your application to see if you can strengthen them, how you can go about doing that. All right, y'all, and that brings us to the end of our workshop. You had tons of questions. We really, really appreciate you sticking with us. We appreciate all of your participation and asking great questions and completing all of our quizzes for you. If you have questions that weren't addressed, please reach out to us. You can send us a message through any of our social media channels. You can also send us a message through the application portal. You can send us an email. You can give us a call. There are so many ways for you to reach us. But we thank you so, so much for your time. We're so excited to be with you on this journey, and we look forward to working with you for the next application cycle. So thanks so much.